Hey, it's Nolan, and I'm on Route 66 in downtown Rolla, Missouri. I spent the last couple of days editing video and annotating photos for this video. It's all on Zanesville, Illinois. But for now, I'm at 6th and Pine. This is where the old Route 66 turned. And then I'm going to head down this way a couple blocks to the Cedar Street Playhouse. I'm going to see some live theater tonight, see a musical. So looking forward to supporting live theater in Rolla, Missouri. If you've taken Route 66 in Illinois, you'll recognize these city names: Springfield, Glenarm, Divernon, Farmersville, Wagoner, and certainly Litchfield and Mount Olive, but perhaps not Zanesville. It's not a town discussed in the Route 66 literature, in print or online. If you've heard of Zanesville, Illinois, that's probably in reference to Zanesville Township, which is this area showed in the red rectangle. The only two communities in Zanesville Township are two ghost towns, Zanesville and Shop Creek. Essentially, the population is spread throughout and no longer concentrated in a smaller area. Censusreporter.org lists only 529 people for all of Zanesville Township. But the focus of this video is on the former community of Zanesville, which is now a Route 66 ghost town. Let's take a look at a map from about 1930, which is when Route 66 first came through here. Like the other Route 66 towns in this area, such as Thomasville, Farmersville, and Wagoner, Zanesville was centered along the railroad tracks a half mile to the west of Route 66. It's south of where Route 66 took a little 300-foot jog to the west, which we can see on this map, also from around 1930. That's where the rest stop is today. Zanesville is south of the Shrine of Our Lady of the Highways, a Route 66 landmark, just west of present-day Exit 63, which is for Illinois State Highway 48, which leads east to Raymond. If you were to head west from here, you'd go right through the ghost town of Zanesville. I was reading an interview with a man by the name of Bert Aikman, who was born in 1878. He described Old Zanesville, and he said Old Zanesville, not Zanesville. He described Old Zanesville as a settlement on the Lincoln Trail, which before the railroad came through, there was a stagecoach stop with changing horses there. He said Old Zanesville was a post office for the whole area, and that the stagecoach brought the mail once a week. The interviewer said that Zanesville dates back to 1825 or 1830. So I looked at maps from well before Route 66 came through, such as this one from 1850, and the original settlement of Zanesville was actually to the northwest. This 1872 map of the Zanesville Township shows the two ghost towns of Zanesville and Shop Creek. And this map, also from 1872, depicts Zanesville as having multiple cross streets. I've drawn what was depicted on that map onto this screenshot of Google Maps to give an idea where those streets would have been. This 1879 map shows the postal route, and its location is consistent with those earlier maps. This 1912 map shows there were several cross streets, or at least there were planned to be several cross streets, such as Morton Street next to Morgan Street. No, that's not going to cause confusion. And then on the far east side of town, West Street. Nope, not confusing in the least. This map, also from 1912, shows what Bert Aikman referred to as Old Zanesville. You'll see a school in the southeast part of town. This was Zanesville School, which was located on the southwest corner of where East First Road curves to the west to meet up with Gobi Trail these days. This map also depicts the former Zanesville Station, which is along the railroad. This is the location that is referred to in the Route 66 era maps and other documents. So, essentially, with the railroad coming through, Zanesville eventually moved southeast. This is a perfect example of what the interstate did to Route 66. It killed it. But don't feel so bad for Route 66, my fellow Route 66 enthusiasts. Route 66 was just as guilty. It did it to itself even, through different alignments, right? It bypassed towns and parts of towns using a newer alignment. And Route 66, even in the earliest years, bypassed the downtown areas of many cities, areas that were built around the railroad. So this is what we have here in Zanesville, right? It was built around the stagecoach, then it moves to being around the railroad, and it moves a little bit to the east to be around Route 66, and then I-55 came through, and that was pretty much it. So by 1912, we have a couple of buildings on Ezra Starkey's property and a railroad siding, the Zanesville station, and a grain elevator on D. McReynolds' property. Across the street, there are a couple buildings owned by C.B. Mundy. A half mile to the east is a north-south street. That became Route 66 18 years later. On the northwest corner is a building on the McReynolds property, and across Future 66 is a school. Here is a map from 1925. Notice that it no longer says Zanesville Station, but rather simply Zanesville. I've annotated this to show old Zanesville, where Zanesville moved to, and where 66 would come through in just 5 years' time. In old Zanesville, we see a couple of cross streets, some buildings, and Zanesville School. Depicted on that map is the Vigneault School, which Bert Aikman said was named after Old Man Vigneault. He said it was off Raymond Road, the one that went to Raymond, so that east-west road that is nowadays Illinois 48 must have been called Raymond Road, and this is important for what I will show you later in the video. Here's another look at that circa 1930 map that depicts the Vigneault School and Raymond Road, aka Illinois 48. The population shift may have begun earlier than 1912. Bert Aikman, who attended Vigneault School, said it was jammed full, 50 students in a room. That would have been the 1880s. Here is a railroad timetable from 1894 that shows Zanesville as a stop. The new Zanesville, not old Zanesville, mind you. And here is a 1929 timetable, also including Zanesville. This was a few years into Route 66's existence, and 1 year before 66 was realigned through Zanesville. Looking at the buildings depicted on that 1925 topo, I started to plot them on an aerial photo to get an idea where they once were. That way, when I got there, I had an idea of where the second town site of Zanesville was. The two buildings on the south side were pretty consistent with the two owned by C.B. Mundy on the 1912 map. So, by 1930, when Route 66 comes through, this map shows the new Zanesville, with that shaded portion in the northeast corner of Raymond Road and the railroad tracks perhaps representing the station. What Bert Aikman called Raymond Road, by the way, is now 22nd Avenue. I wondered if Zanesville continued as a town into the Route 66 era, and sure enough, it remained as a stop on the Illinois Central line in 1937. And then I found this Illinois Central book from 1944 that shows Zanesville population at only 15. 15! So this was a very, very small community, even though the Zanesville Township as a whole was likely much more populated than that. But the Illinois Central still stopped there in 1947, so it's not a ghost town just yet. Now that we're into the mid-1940s, it would be good to check the Jack Rittenhouse book from 1946 to see if there is an entry for Zanesville. There indeed is not, but there are entries for Wagoner and Litchfield. Neither Zanesville nor Shop Creek have entries. There is, however, a listing for a place with a gas station, cafe, and 5 tourist cabins with a first aid station, and a listing for a gas station 3 miles to the south at the junction with Illinois 108. Well, that helps to answer my question about whether Zanesville continued as a town. Shop Creek is a Route 66 ghost town located at Illinois 108, which according to Rittenhouse in 1946 had a gas station. And 3 miles to the north is Zanesville, so there would have been a gas station, cafe, and 5 tourist cabins there, most likely at that intersection with Raymond Road, aka 22nd Avenue or Illinois 48. I'm not sure when the Vigneault School closed, but perhaps all of these were active in the mid-1940s. And that Rittenhouse listing of their 5 tourist cabins must have been these. I found this picture on 66postcards.com labeled as Raymond Tourist Cabins. I emailed the guy that runs the site, Joe Sonderman, to see if he could confirm the name and if he had any additional information about them. He said that Raymond Tourist Cabins was the correct name, but didn't have any other info. With that name, it makes sense if they were located on Raymond Road, or Illinois 48, the road to the town of Raymond, Illinois. So why weren't they instead called Zanesville Tourist Cabins? I think the answer is this. If Zanesville had a population of only 15 and Raymond had about 800, Raymond had more name recognition. It appears in road maps, whereas Zanesville is often omitted. Raymond is located within the next township to the east, so these cabins are, at the very least, in Zanesville Township. Let's have a second look at that 1945 map. Notice the first aid station labeled on the southeast corner of Route 66 and Illinois 48. That was likely the one Rittenhouse mentioned. And what we're seeing is the next shift in Zanesville's location, shifting a half-mile east from the railroad to Route 66. So this may be the only known period photo of the ghost town of Zanesville. Once I-55 came through, everything along Route 66 would be demolished. So the question is, what was the next stage of Zanesville's existence? Here's an aerial shot from 1986 of Zanesville, where the railroad once was. A couple of buildings, and it's not clear if the buildings of CB Mundy are still there by then. Zooming out, we see a gas station along the service road near the interstate exits. So instead of a Route 66 gas station, cafe, tourist cabin, first aid station, and a population around 15, we get the next stage for Zanesville, a single gas station serving the interstate and not much else. But that didn't last either. Here's that station today. Even though it's near an exit, the last business of Zanesville did not survive. And the town site where the railroad station once was, if you look about 1,500 feet to the west, you'll see what looks like a mountain in the distance. That's just a pile of rocks at the ghost town of Zanesville. This view is from roughly where Route 66 used to be, or maybe just a little bit to the west of it. So this would have been, more or less, the view of Zanesville from Route 66. Of course, there was also the Vigneault School, the 1940s gas station, cafe, and Raymond tourist cabins. Let's zoom in a bit closer. And this is from a closer shot, and we'll zoom in again. And this is looking north at the former site of Zanesville. You'll see the Route 66 suite vehicle parked in front of what once was a building. As we zoom out, you can see where the railroad tracks would have been. We turn around and look south, and the path of the railroad is quite clear. On the north side, just a pile of rocks where a building once stood, and this is looking south at that same building site. This is looking north again, and according to 1923 and 1925 topographic maps, there were 4 buildings here, one of which on the west side of the tracks on the Starkey property. This is looking south at the site of one of the 2 CB Mundy buildings, and here is the other one. And this picture is facing northwest toward the original site of Zanesville, which is a couple miles in the distance. But that ghost town site is beyond the scope of what I'm doing, which is getting inspiration for the 66 Ghost Towns movement of the Route 66 suite. So there you have it, a brief history of Zanesville and its relationship to Route 66. I hope you enjoyed getting to know this town. I know I did. I was also excited to find a picture of the place, which quite often is so difficult for ghost towns. I've got plenty of other Route 66 videos on my Patreon, as well as pictures and information on Route 66 that I'm turning up. Some of my videos are made public and are on YouTube, but most of them are set to unlisted, but are accessible by subscribing to my Patreon at patreon.com/Route66Suite. If you're a conductor interested in this work, I have a Facebook page and a website as well. Until next time, farewell from Missouri, and I hope to see you out on the road.